Excellent. So I'll call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Is there any declaration of interest from anyone? And seeing none, I would again ask you to declare if one comes up during the course of the meeting. Item 3 is business arising from the minutes. Do we have any? And item number 4, we have a delegation. I don't know who is going to make the introductions. Perhaps it's Madam CAO, but we do have members from Georgian College. Am I putting you on the spot, Kim?
No, not at all. I was just looking to the clerk about the time.
I wonder, Mr. Warden, because we do have a few minutes, if we could do the consent, and then we'll be closer to the 10 o'clock time.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
So we're on to item number 5. We're looking at the consent agenda. Is there anything from that consent agenda that needs to be pulled, Council? If not, then I will, that is moved actually by Councillor Hutchison and seconded by Councillor Milne. I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? And seeing no hands, I'm going to say that that is carried. Should we go on? Maybe can we deal with the, oh, that will probably take a little bit of time. We probably want to not deal with 7A as we've got a delegation on that.
Right, and I'm not sure how long the following report on the Hanover official plan would be. Randy, did you know?
Anne-Marie's report about the RGI might be a good selection.
Okay, that's item
councils. 7. Yep.
Is everyone okay if I deal with item 7C at this point? Okay, that item is moved by Councillor Robinson and seconded by Councillor Keaveney. Anne-Marie, you have the floor.
Great, and it's actually Josh Gibson that will be presenting this report today.
Okay, I did have that on my list. My apologies.
Thanks very much, Warden. Good morning, Grey County Council. It caught me off guard. I was getting ready for about a couple of hours from now. So this morning I have a report for you regarding a phased-in increase to the maximum RGI rental costs. And the reason we're looking at this is that it's actually been over 10 years since they were last looked at. In the last couple of years, we've had a fairly significant change in the market where our maximum rents for RGI now are falling way behind the average market rents that are set by CMHC. And I will point out that those average market rents from CMHC are significantly lower than what you will actually see in the private market. So it was a good time for us to bring our new rents closer to AMR and generate some additional revenue to maintain our stock. As well, the primary focus of this is to increase equity across our tenants. So we're looking at some tenants who are paying significantly less than 30% of their annual income towards the rental cost. And we want to bring it more equitable across the board. Okay. So tenants in community housing, I'll just give you a little brief overview of rent geared to income. They only pay 30% of their annual income towards their rental costs. And increasing these maximum rents will not change that. So if somebody's income does not bring them to a higher level, even with the increased maximum rents, their rent will stay at that lower value. So this is only for those people with the income to justify the change to the 30%. And rental calculations are all legislated under the Housing Services Act, and we follow those very strictly. And we expect in 2022 that this increase will generate approximately $100,000 in additional revenue. And that increase will slow significantly over the 5-year period as the maximum rents do not meet the income that some of our tenants have, and they fall out of maximum rents. And there is an attached spreadsheet that I know is quite overwhelming that does outline all the changes that we're suggesting and how it's going to impact revenues. And I'll open it up to any questions that anybody has.
Thank you very much, Josh. Questions from anyone? Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm just wondering, Josh, and thank you for the report. What percentage of our tenants would actually pay the maximum amount? Is there trends or any method to the madness, so to speak?
Yeah, so right now about 15% of our 997 units would be at maximum rent. I did look at as we are phasing in these new increases based on current income that our tenants have, that will decrease to around 6% of our portfolio by the end of the 5-year phase-in period. The other thing that this may change is that as we're increasing our maximum rents and bringing it closer to the private market, people might make the decision to move on from community housing as that gap isn't so large. And then we'll be able to fill those places with our higher target needs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keaveney, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Josh, for your presentation. I'm just wondering about the suggested $100,000 additional income to the county. Will that be kind of eaten up in maintenance and additional expenses, or will there be funds that can actually go towards creating more affordable housing?
So this would be an amount that would definitely be needed for maintaining our stock. We have majorly increased operating expenses. So this revenue would help to offset some of those operating expenses.
Thank you. I do not see any further hands. So if that's the case, perhaps it's time to call the question on the motion to receive, to adjust the maximum rents, and to approve those yearly increases. Anyone opposed? Seeing no hands, I'm going to say that that is carried. Council, I'm probably, and with your input, Madam Clerk, I'm going to suggest that we take a break perhaps and come back at 10. Would that make sense? I know that
that's fine if council wishes that.
Yeah, maybe that's a good thing to do now, give the guests a chance to arrive and be on time. And so we'll see you back again in 6 minutes at 10 a.m. Thank you. So we're back at item number 4. We have a few delegations. First, a delegation from Georgian College. And Madam CAO, perhaps you could introduce our guests.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning, Council. So pleased to have join us this morning Mary Lynn Westmoyne, who's the President and CEO of Georgian College, well known to all of you, as well as Steve Lowe, who I believe many of you know, who's a board member of the Board of Governors for Georgian College. So welcome to Mary Lynn and to Steve. Please go ahead with your presentation.
Well, good morning, everyone, and sorry for the delay there. I kind of lost my screen when it switched to our presentation, but I think it's up for everyone. Kim, will you just let me know, confirm that it is up?
We can see it.
Yes, you're great.
That's great. Well, let me begin just by thanking you all. And I hear you were running a little bit ahead, and I arrived right at 10:02, and good for you. Our board isn't normally ahead of schedule, so congratulations, Chair, on that. And let me just say we're so pleased to be here with you this morning to formally address Council and to just share an update on what's happening with your college. With me is Steve Lowe, a member of our Board of Governors from Owen Sound, who I invite now to say just a few words.
There we go. Thank you, Mary Lynn, and good morning and greetings on behalf of Georgian College's Board of Directors. We certainly very much appreciate the ability to speak to County Council this morning. It's been a pretty crazy, extraordinary 18 months at the college, and the board is very much and exceptionally proud of the college's collective resiliency, the staff, the board, management, and students throughout COVID. Despite the many challenges we've faced, Georgian continues to thrive, and our cohort starting in September with new and returning students is about 9,000 students between the various campuses. And they're joining us remotely, in person, or a hybrid or a combination of both. So it's definitely interesting times. Together, we're helping to make their academic and career goals a reality while meeting the evolving need of local industry and employers and contributing to the communities that we're proud to serve in. We've, as a board and as a college, a number of strategic opportunities that we're very excited about that Mary Lynn is going to walk us through this morning. And I want to thank personally you and the county, with gratitude from the board, for your continued interest and ongoing investment in the college and our students. And thank you. And I'll pass it over to Mary Lynn.
Thanks so much. Well, Council, earlier this year, I know I shared the results of an economic impact analysis that the college had done. It shows the college creates value in many ways, some of which are so easy to see, and others which influence the lives of our students, employers, and our economy. And sometimes we don't really understand that economic impact until we do a little bit of research. This study found that our campuses contribute $1.7 billion in income to the Georgian catchment area. That's all the areas that we're in, or approximately 5.3% of the total gross regional product. That's the entire regions that Georgian are in. Of particular interest to you is the $1.4 billion of that impact is generated by our alumni. Based on data from the 2019-2020, the Owen Sound campus alone added $93.5 million in income to the Grey Bruce regional economy, or the equivalent of more than 1,300 jobs. Student spending added $1.6 million to the local economy, and the impact of alumni currently employed in the county workforce amounted to $77.3 million in added income. As this impact will surely increase in the future, I will share more details later on, but Georgian is working hard to bring the region's first 4-year degree to our Owen Sound campus. During the pandemic, as Steve alluded to, the college has continued to support our students and community. We only really had to shut down totally for 2 weeks and came back with a firm resolve to continue. This October, we'll welcome our new executive director, Dave Shorey, whose leadership and expertise will be vital in forging community partnerships. Those of you who would have received my notice will know that Lisa has left us for some personal family reasons. Among several recent achievements in our marine area, Georgian conducted the world's first blended power propulsion pilot courses using iCloud simulation. This is just incredible to see, folks. Students were able to practice and troubleshoot operation of an engine power plant from their homes on a server located in Norway. Still on the marine front, this past winter, mariners training at our facilities booked 1,152 nights at the Best Western Hotel. We estimated those participating in marine training spend about $2 million annually in the local hospitality area. Switching to healthcare, something I have a lot of passion for, and I know you do as well. Thanks to the government tuition and fee funding, we had an overwhelming response in applications to our one-time accelerated personal support worker program. That began in May at the Owen Sound campus. The program is designated to get PSWs out into the field more quickly due to the pandemic. As you can appreciate, their support and skills are desperately needed. Right now, we have 24 students completing paid work placements in the community. And I want to just thank you because I know some of these are in your facilities. As part of community service learning assignments, practical nursing students assisted at the Grey Bruce Health Unit's mass immunization clinics, which was an excellent hands-on learning opportunity for our students, and I think an asset to the community. And we've had a significant increase in our apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship activity. We've added 5 new trades in the last 3 years, now offering 8 in total. The new pre-apprenticeship programs are in partnership with the Canadian Union of Skilled Workers and Bruce Power. We're always evolving our ways of learning and working. I could share many other campus highlights, but perhaps one of our biggest achievements was evolving the ways we learn, work, and support our partners. This is an ongoing journey for us. We know today's students expect more from their education, and the pandemic has only made that more obvious and reaffirmed our commitment to ensuring flexible, experimental, and technology-enabled learning. Frankly, without technology, we wouldn't have been able to continue the last 19 months. Our goal is to offer students more control over their personal learning journey, letting them decide how, where, and when they will study. We know employers expect so much more from our graduates. They've expressed a need to hire grads with enhanced digital literacy, resilience, and problem solving. Almost anywhere I go, those three skills are relayed to me by employers. Higher education is so poised for disruption, and Georgian is ready to take the lead on this journey. Some of our strategic priorities have evolved as a result of the pandemic, and right now we're focusing in three areas. First, digital innovation. That will enable us to offer flexible, personalized, technology-enabled learning and services throughout the student's entire life cycle. More sectors are being disrupted by technology, automation, remote work, and e-commerce. We have to equip our students with the digital skill sets they need to succeed, and in fact lead, as many industries are trying to keep current themselves. Our second priority is equity, diversity, and inclusion, and belonging. We're striving to create a learning and working environment where everyone feels seen, heard, and knows they belong. We were grateful to receive a $400,000 grant in the spring from Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada to deepen our work in that area. We were only one of 11 grants in the country, and I understand over 480 applications. So with that grant, we've hired our first director to lead our efforts. Our third priority that I want to talk to you about is fostering an agile culture, which means being collaborative, continuously thriving to improve, knowing it's safe to try new things and fail. The reason we're so committed to this is we want our graduates to be change makers and understand they can be more entrepreneurial, more innovative, and they can make an incredible difference in society. These are ambitious goals, no doubt, and we're prepared to implement them all with meaningful action. And it requires action to make this change come into effect. On the innovation and collaboration front, I want to share a message of thanks from all of us at Georgian for the exceptional support Grey County provides our college and our students. Without you, we couldn't do it. Your confidence and investment in Georgian has fueled great innovation and growth. The $2 million investment you made in 2014 to support Algoma Central Corporate Marine Emergency Duty Center, wow, that's a mouthful. But that's it. Center has yielded an incredible return on investment and impact for our students, the industry, and others across the region. It's an anchor, and I don't mean that as a pun. It actually has helped us sustain the campus. In any 12-month period, we engage anywhere between 25 and 2,800 participants in training in that center. And this was no exception during the pandemic. Subject to the fourth wave of COVID disrupting our business, and let's all touch wood that it doesn't, we might well exceed the 2,800 participants by the end of March. It'd be our largest year, and the growth only continues because of the quality of facilities that we have right here in our community, and the county helped us make that possible. We pride ourselves on continuing to listen to our employers and our local communities, and we know we need to continue to change. We need you to give us feedback, and we want you to know that we're always able to launch new programs and fill evolving gaps as they come forward. Let's just take, for example, nursing. You were a huge part in helping us advocate for nursing. We know that in 2019, healthcare partners in Grey, Bruce, and Simcoe counties provided resource projections that it estimated a need to hire 4,300 new nurses over the next decade. That's not 400 new nurses, that's 4,300 new nurses. This was before COVID hit. And we all understand the impact that has made both on our nurses that are doing heroic jobs, but on the communities around us. When the pandemic ends, the nursing shortage will not. As a college community, we need to be part of the solution, and Georgian can meet this challenge. And thanks to you, you were able to help all colleges in Ontario get the right to have degree completion of nurses. And we're still waiting for government final approval, but we do know that it's coming shortly. Hopefully within the next 3 or 4 weeks, we've made our way through all the hurdles that are required. And we know that in 2022, we will be launching our nursing degree right in Owen Sound and in Barrie. The Georgian BSCN program will help local healthcare institutions fill severe nursing shortage with highly skilled grads who have the ability to stay in their own communities, study here, make their homes here, and stay here so they can contribute to the health and well-being of our community. This is about the future. This is about our shared vision. And again, I want to thank you for your leadership in helping the government allow colleges to provide degrees in nursing. Our program, since the announcement was made just 18 months ago in your community, has been designed to meet the community needs. It will meet things like gerontology, Indigenous, and mental health needs that are relevant in a rural community and will allow us to make sure that our graduates understand the nursing that's required. We had an opportunity to provide our vision in more detail to the Healthcare Funding Task Force on September 14th. And I know that you've had an opportunity to have a report from them. This transition will be certainly transformative for our Owen Sound campus. And the ability to deliver state-of-the-art training through a facility to underpin Central Ontario's first year standalone nursing degree will be huge for Georgian. As you've probably read in the minutes from the Healthcare Funding Task Force meeting, we've carved out 9,200 square feet of space to create a purpose-designed nursing and wellness wing and equip it with the latest simulation technology and artificial intelligence capabilities and healthcare equipment needed to educate BSc and students, plus others, and provide real-life learning training experiences. And because we're beginning from the ground floor, this truly will be a state-of-the-art facility. The transformation will be approximately 7.1 million, and the benefits of such an incredible learning space will be extended way beyond just the nursing program to high demand occupations like our personal support worker, practical nursing, developmental service worker, and policing. These students at the Owen Sound campus will also learn and train in the new wing, and they will have the skills to work closely with our nursing graduates. As part of our expansion in Owen Sound, Georgian is making a significant institutional investment and also seeking support of the community. As some of council heard from my colleagues who presented to the Healthcare Funding Task Force, this is a project that needs strong partners. Grey County and Georgian have a great history of success and innovation. With an investment of $1 million from Grey County towards the implementation of Georgian's BSCN degree and learning environment, we'll join forces in a powerful way to bring solutions to our healthcare crisis, one of the most pressing needs right now. These funds, as I said, will allow nurses to train locally, graduate here, and work in our community. We have a healthcare talent crisis in front of us, and this initiative represents a homegrown, grow your own solution for our community and our region. Just this month, we received further impactful letters from Gary Sims, President and CEO of Grey Bruce Health Services, and Nora Holder, President and CEO from Collingwood General and Marine Hospital, stating the direct and positive impact Georgian's BSCN program will have as they are facing these province-wide challenges. And they're realizing that many of their nurses are ready to retire and probably will shortly after the pandemic subsides. The demand is simply greater than supply. And this is before any expansion in service is done to meet the growing populations in your communities. As Grey continues to grow in both population and economic prosperity, this innovation will ensure the region has the healthcare talent it so desperately needs. Over to you, Steve, to close this off.
Thanks, Mary Lynn. I can't really emphasize what an incredible opportunity it is to offer a homegrown Bachelor of Science in Nursing at the Owen Sound campus, a leading edge university program right here in Owen Sound. It has such a significant impact for local students in Grey County. And I guess my background, if you know me, is a professional firm, and we're heavily reliant on local students. They were an underpinning of the practice. Once we extracted them from universities south, when they went to universities south of here or north, we had a very talented Grey County talent pool, and they chose to be here. They could have worked anywhere, they could have made it anywhere, but they chose to be here. And what this program does is allow students to be educated here and choose to be here. The second impact is our local healthcare system. As Mary Lynn has pointed out, we're in desperate need of nurses, and this is going to address that. The other thing is it just has a significant impact on not only the residents of Grey County, but also the business community. A healthy healthcare system is a healthy community and a healthy business community. And thank you very much. So as you can see, we're at a very exciting time for Georgian College, in particular the Owen Sound campus, our students in Grey County. Georgian College is very proud to be part of Grey County and very much looking forward to launching this new degree. I think it's a game changer. And I know together we can continue to turn opportunities into long-term benefits that will serve Georgian students in Grey County well now into the future. And thank you very much, County Council, for your time today.
Thank you very much, Steve and Mary Lynn. I have to tell you, a 4-year honors Bachelor of Science nursing program here locally is for me very exciting. And you're quite right, Steve, it is a game changer. Mary Lynn, I like that you started off your presentation by saying, I'm here to provide you with an update on your college. You're right, it is our college. And I like that you mentioned it that way. It is an update on our college. This has been quite the partnership. We've been your partners all the way, and we've enjoyed success together. And moving forward, I know that we'll continue to work together to have even further successes. Could I have the full screen, please, so I could see the hands? Thank you very much. Councillor Potter, you have a question.
Thank you. More of a comment than a question, but here in the Blue Mountains, we feel doubly blessed because we have the Southern Georgia Bay campus just a short distance away, as well as the Old Sound campus. But to build on some of the comments that were made when we did our economic development strategy, which I led about 12 years ago here in the Blue Mountains, one of the things we heard about over and over and over again was the need for more post-secondary education facilities within our area to help drive economic benefits for the area. And I know that the delegation or the deputation touched on that. I just wanted to underline it, that is so important. And the more we can work in partnership with Georgian, and I will say other facilities, not to invite competition, but certainly there are others that have other specialties. I think they can, they add to the richness of life in our communities, but they also add to our economic activity. And there are some other possibilities. I remember talking about a school of geriatric medicine being a natural for our area. So yeah, I'm going to push you. But yeah, the future is full of possibilities for Georgian and for us. And I think that we all need to continue our partnership and have this going even more full tilt in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Potter. I don't see any other. Oh, Councillor Clumpus, you're next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden, and good morning, County Council, and good morning to you, Marilyn. Nice to see you again, and to you, Mr. Lowe. Thanks so much for this very, very exciting presentation. It's the second time I've heard it now, and it gets more exciting every time we hear it. So couldn't be more enthusiastic about the project ahead of us and the partnership that we're all looking at forming here. Access to primary health care is very near and dear to my heart, and recognizing the deficiencies that we have in this area in some cases. And I think that this program is just going to be wonderful in terms of addressing the needs in that direction. So thank you so much for that. I'm just so thrilled to see it happening. And I'm wondering from the perspective of local participation in perhaps providing some scholarships or some incentives for our students, some encouragement through our high school programming and all of those kinds of things that we can do at the municipal level. Can you give us some kind of an idea of a cost for a 4-year program for students entering into this very exciting opportunity?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have to be careful because, you know, when people ask me numbers, and I know we're going live on this, but it is a degree program, mm-hmm. and the tuition is more like $4,000 or $5,000 a semester, Barb. So it's an expensive program for students to be in. We do run extensive scholarship programs. We do run bursaries. Of course, our first goal is to get the capital, to get the facility there, but we would be eager to talk to anyone who wanted to support a student. We run a number of scholarship and bursary programs. In particular, there's a neat program that we run called Women in Tuition, and it is tuition support from women and men who want to give women a leg up in higher education. And I believe education is the greatest equalizer in life. And both if you can give a student an opportunity to get an education, I know that money comes back to us so many different ways in our community. So there are scholarships, we will have bursaries, and you know, we will work hard to make sure that students who can't afford to come to higher education have the ability to do that. And we have an extensive support financial aid system, Barb, that supports that. You know, we're very, very mindful that a large portion of our students are also eligible for Ontario tuition support, and we work very closely with them for that. So no student should be turned away from a higher education institution, and we work hard to make sure that it's affordable for them. And we look forward to the community helping us in nursing as we move this forward. And if I could, Mr. Chair, I just want to make one reference about the South Georgian Bay campus, if I could. because as you will know, a couple of years ago, the focus was on the shortage in the hospitality industry. And we had great success in launching a number of international hospitality programs. And they unfortunately, have been put on hold because it's hard for international students to get in the country. But I can tell you yesterday, India and Canada came to an agreement that flights from India can start again, and we're starting to see more flights. So, for those of you who are thinking about the hospitality industry, certainly we'll be resuming those programs as soon as we absolutely can. So great point, Rob, about making sure both campuses are sustainable. But we want to also design it in a way that the programs that we offer are distinct enough that we have enough students at each campus to sustain it and grow and support both the communities that kind of are twinned in your catchment area.
Thank you very much. I do not see any other hands. So with that said, I'm going to thank you, Steve and Mary Lynn, for a very exciting presentation. Very well done, and we're all looking forward to seeing this thing move forward. Thank you again.
It was our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda. Sorry, did I miss something?
No, I think we were just thanking your time.
All right, cheers.
Bye now.
Next on the agenda is we do
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
I apologize. I do see Councillor Robinson with her hand up.
My apologies, Councillor Robinson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Clerk. I just want to advise Council that I will be asking for a reconsideration of one of the consent items, number C, PDR-CW 2021, Chapman's Official Plan Amendment, number 10, Merit Report, and would ask for that be addressed at the appropriate time so that we could have a discussion in terms of having that resolution addressed differently. So if you could assist in terms of when that reconsideration and consideration for a different course of action could take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm in your hands because we have approved the consent agenda already.
We will look at this at the end of the items for discussion, and we'll look for a resolution to review that particular item on the consent agenda. I'll put some wording together during that time.
Thank you.
That is 6C.
6C, yes.
Wow. Okay. Fair enough, Councillor Robinson?
Yes, thank you very much. Look forward to that discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we are on to our next delegation. Let me get back up here. And I did see Monsieur, I want to say Monsieur, anytime I see the name Stéphane Tremblay, I feel like I should say Monsieur. He is with the Wagner Bridges and Roads Committee of Ratepayers. You're next, and you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Morning.
Esteemed councillors, a member of councils, and Your Worship, thank you for giving us the opportunity to present to you today on this issue that is very important to us. We have a presentation. I will be sharing my screen. So I would like to orient you to the ground so that you have an idea of what we're dealing with here. Are you able to see the map?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right. There you go. Are you able to see this?
I am, yes.
All right, thank you. So the first map I would like to introduce you to is a map of the farms that surrounds the two bridges that are closed. We used to use those bridges up until they were closed. So our presentation, of course, is about Bridge 2122, which is on the town line between Meaford and Chatsworth. The bridge has been closed since January 2016. So the map, north is the top of the map, south is the bottom, of course, and west and east. And you can see there's a distribution of about 16 farming operations around, which in total cover 7,200 acres of valley farmland between Walters Falls, surrounding Walters Falls and Wagner. What you see here, the little dots in green and in yellow are the bridges that are giving us access to that land. And the bridge 2122 is the red dot right here in the center of the map. So I would like to switch my screen now to the presentation deck, which I believe you have a copy of. So if you give me just a minute, I will share my screen again for the presentation. Do you see the slide called map, slide number 2 of the deck?
Yes, I do.
Excellent, thank you. So just to do a bit of an introduction of Brad and I. So I am the chairman of the Wagner Road and Bridge and Roads Committee. It's a committee of ratepayer that was formed following the closure of the bridge to give a voice to the people who use that bridge and were denied the usage of that bridge by virtue of their closures. We have been in this area since 2011. We've been farming since 1647 in Canada. That is the Tremblay families. And we're happy to have moved here and contribute in terms of investment and effort in reopening lands in the Grey Highlands here near Walters Falls. I'm joined with our vice chair of the committee, Brad Torrey, whose family came here in 1890, and they're in their 5th generation of farming the land that they currently have in the area. So the second map that I would like to show you before I pass the floor to Brad is the map of the geographical area surrounding the 2 bridges. So what you see here, what you have X's, are all of the steep hills that are grades anywhere from 7 to 11%. For those of you who are engineer-minded, they are fairly steep hill to negotiate with any kind of trailer or loads. As you can see, the general contour line of the valley are such that this is the high point and this is the low point of the valley. And then this is the plateau that surrounds the Grey Highlands. The lines, the white, blue, and yellow line outlines these soft grade approach roads that the farmers use to bring their grains back to their farms or to bring grains to elevators that are on the 7th line. So you will see here that there's a low soft grade approach going through Walters Falls with County Road 40, Side Road 4 and Deviation Line, and the Town Line is another soft grade road that is heavily used by agricultural traffic, and the blue line between the 2 steep hills here is also a soft grade approach. So what that means is any kind of ag services trucks would use those roads, such as milk trucks or feed trucks, and the farmers towing wagons with hay or grain would use those trucks to avoid the steep hills. So you've now been oriented to the ground. I would like to leave the floor for the next part of our presentation to Brad to facilitate that presentation. Brad?
Brad, before you get started, I'll give you a second. I apologize that I did not include you in the introduction.
Okay, well, that's okay. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you for hearing some of our thoughts this morning. And I said to Stefan a couple of days ago, with the way the weather was, we were off to an early harvest. I said this could be a real conflict for me this morning, but 6 inches of rain later, it's turned out to be a good morning. So anyway, just a few things I want us to ponder before I share a few thoughts that we can just get in our heads, is that agriculture still is the #1 economic driver for the county and also most of our municipalities. And we are currently experiencing a new wave of investment in our rural Grey, new building, farm clearing, tile draining, and just like your houses in town, land values over even the last 2 years have really accelerated. So we need our county municipalities to keep up with the infrastructure and to operate these operations safely and efficiently, including the bridges. And I think sometimes when you're out here in the back roads, you tend to feel like you're forgotten. So like I said, my name is Brad Torrey. I'm speaking on behalf of the farmers and agribusiness that use the twin bridges. The push to have them reopened has been a slow, painful process with hundreds of hours invested in presentations, meeting, and talking with our local politicians. It first started with the ownership was Meafort's responsibility, to 3 years later that Chatsworth was half owner under a new boundary agreement, to now that the county may be responsible for one of the structures due to the length of the span. This closure to the East Corridor has been a huge blow for the farm community, agribusiness, local residents, and the increasing number of homes and tourists to the area. All business are built on safety, then efficiencies, which both of these have been overlooked. The alternate routes are now a liability for a growing ag community. The hauling of grains, feedstuffs, livestock, and heavy truck deliveries has become an art most days to negotiate the steep grades all 4 seasons of the year, not to mention the thousands of dollars it's costing in extra transportation each year. Infrastructure is huge for farmers to have good roads and bridges to do our job safely and efficiently. By doing nothing, it sends a loud message that we don't really matter and are putting a price on safety. If you support agriculture, now is the time to show your leadership. And I put the challenge out that the alternate routes, unless you physically come and drive these roads or want to join in someday with a couple big loads of hay or a manure spreader, you really don't get the struggles we deal with daily. So anyway, keep those things in mind, and I appreciate your time, and I'm going to pass it back to Steph. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. So to add to Brad's presentation, I'd like to draw your attention to a number of usage facts. So as Brad mentioned, the agriculture sector in Grey County is still one of the largest income and wealth generator. In the valley surrounded by Walters Falls and Bogner, we have 29 farming operations. We have 5 local businesses that use this infrastructure. And I refer to all the infrastructure within that area. There's 9 tourist attractions, and it is growing. There's also a growth in residents, as we can witness by the new houses going up around us and the new farm buildings. And there's certainly an increase in traffic of all kinds, including tourism. We also note that there is a duty existing under the Ontario Regulation 104, Section 97(3), for the municipalities to maintain the infrastructure they inherited during the downloading of that infrastructure to the municipalities that we feel may not have been diligently kept over the past decades. The pictures you see there are recent events to illustrate what the challenge we face. We'll apologize that we didn't have the video ready of the drone to show you the extent of the hills that are on the proposed alternate roads that justifies partially the closure of the 2 bridges. Again, I'd like to invite all of you, if you have a chance, to drive around and come and see what we have to deal with. And if you're interested, we'll gladly have you in the tractor with us when we're trying to negotiate those hills downward with 40 tons of hay or grain in the back of the tractor. You'll realize very quickly that the alternative roads are not safe for our operators and ourselves. And at the core of the safety issue here also is the fact that the valley is the furthest away from fire, ambulance, and police service. We happen to be right in the middle of the furthest distance from Meafort, from Inter Township, and from Chatsworth, police, fire, and ambulance service. And in February of 2020, we had 2 kids who were sent to hospital because of a bus that took the side road 10 hill, and it's a blind hill, hit a grader that was doing its work in the winter, And that bus route was rerouted as a result of 21-22 being shut down. It used to use the two bridges, and that accident would have been avoided if the bridges had been kept open. An important fact as well for you to keep in mind is the fact that we, as local users of the bridges, we send an average 1.1 million per year in property taxes, and this excludes the education levies to both municipalities and to the county. In terms of economic activities sustained in this valley, and which those two bridges are core to, it's about $16.5 million to our estimate last year. About 9.6 million of income is generated by the farms, the 7,200 acres surrounding those two bridges. The agribusiness sector, which serves those farms, generates about $3.9 million of revenue. And the other sectors, businesses that operates and that used to use those bridges generate about $2.3 million a year. And other incomes that are not business related is about $592,000. So by our estimate, based on OMAFRA and Agricorp and StatsCan and Industry Canada's data, we generate about $6.5 million of income in this area, in the area surrounding the bridges. And I should mention that the agricultural revenue does not include the quota income. So if any of those farms have a chicken or a milk quota, that's not included in this number. As far as the individual impact that the closure of the bridge has had in the past 5 years, this table will show you that every individual who used to drive over those two bridges have now had to use detours. And those detours essentially, if you're traveling to the west or you're traveling to the east, added on average, if you're using alternate route A or B, which are the alternate routes around the bridges, will either add 12 kilometers or 23 kilometers to your trip at 56 cents a kilometer, an average of $7 to $13 going west per trip. And the number of trips per year is estimated at about 576. And with a time here associated with it, it costs every individual who has been inconvenienced by the closure of those two bridges an additional about $3,700 to $7,000, depending on which road you take. And you still expose yourself to added safety risks by using steeper hills. And the same thing with going east. So on average, we've added 14 kilometers to the trips of the residents and business owners and business operators, about a 20 minutes ride, and also about an extra $4,000 to our costs. And that's been sustained since the bridge have been closed by the individuals who have been inconvenienced. Why these bridges are important beside the safety aspects, they support our farmer as Brad's mentioned, and also they cannot be taken outside of the context of the topography. We live in the Grey Highlands. We're challenged by hills and valleys and gullies to cross, and we have to have safe access to our farms and our fields to be able to continue contributing to the county and the municipal success and wealth. It has increased our costs, and it also has reduced our access to police, fire, and ambulance service. And to a very large degree, it creates the impression that we are now a second class of ratepayers who receive less services from the municipalities and county despite paying over $1.1 million in property taxes per year. We need these bridges reopened going forward. We have been trying to make our voice heard for the past 4 or 5 years, not too much success. And we are getting now to a point where we may very well be in danger, or if they've been closed for 5 years, they don't need them. And I think Pat can attest to the fact that the interest is still very much alive in these bridges. When he came to measure them, there were over 30 people who attended the bridge measurement. By his own word, it was the largest crowd witnessing the measurement of a bridge. since he started with the county. So we cannot help but to feel that although we dutifully pay our taxes, we do not enjoy the same opportunity to feel safe on our roads, to prosper without undue losses, and to be happy as other ratepayers are in the county. We feel let down, honestly, by our politicians and the civil servants who were hired to mind the infrastructure they inherited 25 years ago from our fathers and mothers. So we would very much like to see a commitment going forward and a shared vision and a plan for the growth of the development of the valley, which would include the support to the agricultural sector, which provide a large income to individuals who work in it and provides benefit back in terms of tourism and investment. We do need all partners to work together, which has not necessarily been the case so far. And we see a genuine, unique opportunity for county to take the lead on this and bring the federal, the province, and the two municipalities together and try to apply innovation instead of bureaucratic thinking and trying to solve this problem that's been created for us for the past 5 years. We would very much like to see also a commitment to continue investing in the infrastructure to support the vision and the potential that the valley has to offer for the county, both on the tourism aspect, but also in the business and agricultural aspect.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
We're left with the following question, Your Worship, as far as the future of this infrastructure and the directions that our governments, various level of governments will take. And we'd like very much to leave you with this to ponder is, will council show its support for one of its largest revenue generators and accept the responsibility for the larger of the two bridges? And will council also actively work with both municipalities and the two other level of governments to get involved in getting us out of the impasse that we're in and get those bridges reopened and fixed, preferably before the next election? And will council please give us a clear statement as to what it intends to do to support the growth of our community going forward, because we are left in a bit of a cloud of doubt as to whether or not we matter in this area. And then in closing, if I'm allowed, this issue is not about a half-inch in length of a bridge closed for nearly 5 years. It is really about correcting a gross negligence of a legal responsibility under law by the parties involved. It is, as Brad mentioned, showing leadership where the jurisdictions involved are hoping that this issue will go away. It is also encouraging innovation instead of bureaucratic thinking and finding a solution. There are plenty of solutions that will not cost $2 million per bridge that we are quite amenable to look at if we're given a chance. And it's also about investing in the future of our growing community and in one of the county's assets. In whichever way this council decide on this issue, I'd like to remind you that it will continue to have a material impact on our safety, on our faith in our institution, on our prosperity, and also in our continued investment in this valley. I remind you that just in the past 10 years, $71 million of our individual monies have gone into rebuilding our farms, improving them, draining the fields, and so on and so forth. That is not a small investment. And if you'd like us to continue doing this, we need to have some kind of assurance from the county that this investment is not wasted. So we kindly request that council consider seriously taking ownership of one of the bridges and that it takes the leadership role in reopening both of them. We'd like to thank you for your attention and time, and I would like to thank Brad as well for his presentation this morning, as for his time. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tremblay, and thank you very much, Mr. Tory. Councillor O'Leary has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning, County Council. Stefan and Brad, thanks very much for your presentation. I've looked over your usage facts, your economic activity. I've studied your individual impact. I can't help but look at our $8 million 10th Street Bridge that we just replaced that has 30,000 cars a day going over it, sometimes 50,000 in the tourist season. And we received $0 from the County of Grey. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity. Explain to me the difference between this $8 million bridge and getting no money from the county and your bridge. Why would we put money into your bridge when it's not a county road?
I can certainly understand the question, Councillor O'Leary, and thank you for raising it. Of course, the conundrum that we run into when we have a rural and an urban county is how much of the resources do we have will we invest in the given infrastructure of each of the constituent part of the county. And you know, in Sound and Hanover, of course, you're incorporated cities, and we unfortunately have to work within the confine of the Municipal Act, which impose responsibilities on each of the various constituent governments to look after the infrastructure that they've been given. And I use the 10th Street Bridge almost every week, 4 or 5 times. And I understand that it sustains the traffic that moves not only county traffic, city traffic, but also provincial traffic on its way to Tobermory. And I cannot answer why you failed to receive funding from the federal or the province on that particular piece of infrastructure. But to answer your question as to why counties should consider investing in this bridge, I understand that county has given itself some rules with regards to town line bridges, where they may be 2 different ability to pay between municipalities, and that bridge may very well be falling under that rule, that county gets involved in helping the 2 municipalities resolve their inabilities or abilities to pay, or discrepancy in ability to pay for this piece of infrastructure. But also to keep in mind that the county should consider investing in those bridges, because 46% of its population still is living in a rural area. And the tax wealth that is generated by the county comes from one of its largest sector, the agricultural sector, which is predominantly in and outside the urban areas of the county. And from that regard, the municipalities have a lower tax base to draw from to be able to pay for that infrastructure. And that is why the higher level governments should be solicited in terms of trying to find a solution and fund a solution. Here, there is no doubt that if I were an Owen Sound councillor, I'd be wondering, well, why should I pay $2 million for 2,900 residents as opposed to 50,000 people who use my bridge in my town? To be honest with you, there's no real answer to that in the end. And I guess when it comes to governance, the question of equitable distribution of the communal wealth is left for you as councillors to decide where you're going to get your best bang for the buck. There's no doubt that the 10th Street Bridge or the 10th Street Bridge support a lot of economic activity. And I can't speak to why the county has not funded that bridge per se. But what we're asking is that we should rise above our differences and our petty esprit clocher, as we say in Quebec, to try to resolve a problem for a significant part of our community and of our 2 municipalities. And it very much depends on the vision, whether or not we want to be insular and infighting, or whether we want to demonstrate communal support for the better welfare of and the increased welfare and wealth of all of our 93,000 residents in the county, as opposed to just 22,000. We're not going to resolve this.
I don't want to be disrespectful, Mr. Tremblay, but I do see a number of hands, and so I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to ask questions. Councillor O'Leary, is there anything else from you?
Yeah, just a follow-up comment. Stefan, your answer is exactly what I thought. There is no real answer. And it's not that I'm not sympathetic to your to your problem. My point is, it's just not county's responsibility to put money into bridges or this particular bridge any more than the county didn't put money into our bridge. It's just, you know, we have to look at the county as a whole, not just as individuals. I'm only giving you the 10th Street Bridge as an example, but you know, I just don't see the issue with, it's just not a county responsibility. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Councillor Keaveney, you're next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden, and I want to express my appreciation to Mr. Tremblay and Mr. Tory for presenting to us this morning. And I know you both know that you have and have had my support in this issue for a number of years. And I very much appreciate the safety concerns that you have brought to our attention and the importance of agriculture across the county. And especially in your own leadership with the Bogner Bridges and Roads Committee. It's the only committee that I'm aware of within the county where a group of farmers have come together to advocate for their needs. And I think that's just incredibly important. And I know we'll talk more when we get into the presentation of the report about the responsibility of the county, but my understanding is that it just comes down to the measurement at which I was present. And it does meet the requirements, and we'll hear from Randy and Pat and so on when we get into that discussion. But my question for both of you, if I may, is I wonder if you could expand a little bit from your perspective on the type of crossing, the kind of bridge that you'd like to see should the county and municipalities go forward with this investment. Do you require a double lane bridge, or does a single lane bridge work? And what just from that perspective, if you could share a little bit about what kind of crossing would really meet your needs as we go forward with the discussion.
Well, we remain cognizant of the fact that this is not going to be a county road, and it's not going to be sustaining 50,000 crossing a day. So really, what we're looking for is a structure sufficient for our operators to be able to drive a tractor and a couple of wagon, either loaded with hay or loaded with grain, and sufficient enough to sustain the weight of a combine, which is the type of agricultural traffic that most would be mostly using those bridges. So a single lane bridge that is wide enough to accommodate those equipment and to accommodate the pedestrian traffic that is negotiating the bridge when they're using the Bruce Trail would be more than sufficient for us.
Anything else, Councillor Keating?
Not at this time, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Mr. Tremblay, for your response.
Thank you. Councillor Desai, you're next.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. Thank you very much, Mr. Tory and Mr. Tremblay, for the presentation. I will take this opportunity to say that this really highlights the importance of good asset management. The other question I have, Warden Hicks, is this is perhaps for staff. The gentleman mentioned that the Director for Transportation was out measuring bridges and looking at it. My question is there a staff report that's forthcoming? Or what's the follow-up from that? And then finally, Councillor O'Leary, I think he maybe saved himself with his last statement, but I was about to say he ought to remember he's representing Grey County and not Owen Sound at this table. But I do appreciate the presentation, and I just I think it's a great reminder of how important good asset management is. Thank you, Warden Hicks.
Thank you, Councillor Desai. And I believe that the answer to your question, we're going to be discussing this matter next with the report that's coming up in item 7.1. So I believe that question will get answered. If I'm wrong about that, then maybe staff can correct me. But I want to make sure that we save that discussion for when we're discussing the report that's before us.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Warden. It'll be addressed as part of the staff report that's later on the agenda.
Very good. And I noticed that the recommendation in there is that staff would bring back a report for review, but we'll have that discussion shortly. Deputy Warden McQueen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you very much for the presentation. Fairly familiar with that area because that is sort of the way I go up to county council. When we were going to county council, that was my route that I would travel. So I am familiar with that area. Just as a side, I know like all of our municipalities are I don't know if the word is blessed or however, but each municipality do have a large number of water crossing bridges. I guess it makes up the beauty of Grey County as it is, and certainly from Grey Highlands perspective, we've done a road bridge study, and we have classified a lot of our bridges from high, medium, and low priority, and have been continuing to upgrade those bridges. And we have struggled over low volume roads, but we've continued to maintain or come up with solutions for those water crossings. As one example, and maybe we can think of, maybe there's possibilities of thinking outside the box. I know we had a particular water crossing bridge that was very much deteriorated to the point where we were being faced to close the road. But we looked at other solutions, and what we ended up coming up with was two large culverts that we installed, or actually our staff installed. They removed the old bridge. It was a Lower Valley Road just off of County Road 7, and certainly installed two large culverts that we certainly were engineered to be sufficient for, I guess, those 100-year storms. However, you have to make sure you engineer it for. But basically, with our staff doing that, with material that we provided, it cost us about $40,000 compared to a high cost that we were looking at through replacing it as an engineered concrete structure. So again, I just wondered if there are ways of looking outside the box in the sense of looking at new solutions. And if you wanted to follow up with our staff on what we did there, it certainly was a very cost-effective way, because there was agricultural uses on that road, a very low volume road. But again, we felt it was important to maintain that access. So anyway, I just convey that. And again, Mr. Warden, will further have a conversation on the report that's coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I want to thank the two gentlemen for their presentation. And being involved with agriculture myself, I can fully appreciate the challenges of trying to move product and equipment on the roads. I mean, the traffic itself is just nuts these days without having to worry about steep hills and all the rest of it. So I can fully empathize with the situation the producers in that area encounter. I was just going to say, and perhaps we'll get into it during the staff report later in the meeting, but there is a structure up in that part of the world that the county installed a number of years ago under our previous director of transportation that costs the county a significant amount of money and a lot of engineering and a lot of heart-stopping debate, I'm sure. So to suggest that the county shouldn't participate, I think is wrong. I believe the county should participate if it's a matter of inches. Length matters, I guess, is what someone might say. But I look forward to the discussion during the debate, during the staff report, rather. And I think maybe we all need to consider Councillor Desai's comments earlier. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's just probably a good point to segue to item 7.1. Mr. Tremblay and Mr. Torrey, I want to thank you very much for your delegation today, and I would ask you to stick around because we're going to discuss this very item through the staff report that's coming up next. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are now going to turn to item 7A. I think that puts Randy on deck discussing structures 21 and 22. This item has been moved by Councillor Milne and seconded by Councillor Burley. Randy, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, and good morning, everyone. I know Pat is tied up in other meetings. I think he's connected in right now. So he's hopping in between meetings. So I'm going to do my best to present an overview of this report. And if Pat is connected in, he can help answer any questions that committee members may have. First, I just want to thank Stefan and Brad for their presentation this morning and highlighting the concerns and challenges as a result of these structures being closed. Greatly appreciate you providing that presentation for sure. So this report, staff wanted to provide council with some background information regarding these structures based on what we currently know, and to seek direction from council on whether you would like staff to investigate some additional matters identified in the staff report. Recently, Grey County has been contacted by Municipality Meaford to investigate whether Structure 22 should be a Grey County asset. Structure 21, which is just situated to the west, as highlighted in the delegation presentation today, it has a span of 5.1 meters, which is under the span length to be considered a county structure. So that's the structure that's just immediately to the west of Structure 22. A Meaford staff report was presented to Meaford Council in June of this year, which suggested that Meaford and Chatsworth would follow the county's lead regarding any decisions on either the replacement of the continued closure of the structures, depending on the outcome of Structure 22 in terms of ownership. As highlighted earlier, typically the county owns bridges on a town line road where the span of the bridge is greater than 20 feet, which is approximately 6.096 meters. This length was established through a bylaw, in fact, a bylaw 1102 that was passed in 1928. Structure 22 is currently not in the Grey County structure inventory. The span of the Structure 22 is still somewhat in question. The OSIM report that has been completed by Meaford in the past states that the span is 6.3 meters. Grey County staff performed a measurement last month with one side measuring at 6.085 meters and the other side being 6.094 meters, which is just slightly under the 6.096 meter span. Subsequently, this structure was also measured by Meaford's bridge consultant recently and found to be 6.10 meters, and in their opinion satisfies their criteria to be considered a county structure. There are other historical facts about the structure that are unknown to county staff at this time in order to truly determine ownership, and these could be investigated further if council so directs. This includes things like who originally constructed Structure 22, who has been maintaining or contributing to the maintenance of the structure since the time it was originally constructed. Meaford did complete an environmental assessment in 2017 on the structures, which recommended that the structures be removed, and a link to the EA document was included in the report. If a different option were to be considered beyond what was recommended in the 2017 EA, then the environmental assessment would need to be reopened to potentially arrive at another result. And it's our understanding that Meaford Council would carry money in their budget to potentially reopen the environmental assessment. Meaford has also completed a preliminary design report evaluating different construction options for the two structures, with prices ranging anywhere from $750,000 to over $4 million, and that's for both structures. If Grey County owns Structure 22, the recommendation may be to remove the structure due to liability issues, which is the current recommendation in the environmental assessment completed by Meaford. As council heard today, local citizens, farming operations, and other local businesses have expressed the importance of the structures and the corresponding road for their operations. There are also many trails in the immediate area, and the bridges provide linkages to some of those potential trail loops. We did highlight in the staff report that as part of the 2015 Transportation Master Plan that was received by council, that one of the action items that was supported by council was to develop bridge classification criteria based on principles of when a bridge should be replaced or closed, and to evaluate options to transfer county-owned structures on local municipal roads. So those structures that have already been identified on local municipal roads, looking at potential options to transfer these. The bridge classification criteria has not been completed to date, and therefore the evaluation of options to transfer those county-owned structures on local roads has not been explored at this time. However, staff wanted to highlight this previous direction from council regarding structures on local municipal roads. In order for council to make an informed decision with respect to this particular matter, there are some other things that would potentially need to be investigated should council direct staff to explore this topic further. These include, as I mentioned earlier, the history of the structure, including when it was built, who built the structure, who paid for the original construction, and ongoing maintenance of these structures. If directed, Transportation Services would work with Grey Root's archive staff to search for any potential historical records in that regard. Other areas that we would need to investigate are what are the liabilities and risks associated with the structure in its current state. We would also want to confirm the costs to replace structure 22 as part of already the discussion and questions. There may be a multitude of different options to consider. So that's something that we'd want to bring back some further information to council with respect to the costs. Also confirming the plans and intentions of the municipality of Meaford and the township of Chatsworth with respect to structure 21. For example, if structure 22 were to be replaced, would the municipality of Meaford and the township of Chatsworth commit to replacing and maintaining structure 21? Also looking at other options, is there a more cost-effective solution for all parties? Example, replacing the two structures with one and sharing the cost 3 ways, or as Councillor McQueen indicated, can these structures be replaced through a culvert versus a bridge structure? So those are some of the things that we want to explore further. And are there other options beyond the municipality and or the county owning these structures that could be considered? And we've identified some of those potential options in the staff report as well. Everything from potentially leasing these road structures, making this this particular road section a private road, looking at some sort of road association ownership framework in order to continue to have these structures and road open and maintained. There are other legislation and legal considerations that we would need to be explored further as well. So based on this, the recommendation is to receive this report. And if council is interested in investigating this topic further, to direct staff to move forward with these investigations and to bring back a staff report, which would provide further information for council to consider and would outline potential next steps and options for council's consideration. And we'd be happy to take any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much. And before we go to questions, Pat, is there anything that you wanted to add to this?
No, I think I'll just wait and see what the questions are and we can respond to those.
Excellent. Councillor Keating, you're first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. And I just wanted to add, if I may, Randy, a little bit of clarification to the original EA conducted by Meaford. Okay. The problem statement that was attached to that did include a reference to potentially closing the bridges. And since then, our council in Meaford has readdressed our bridge SOTI report, State of the Infrastructure, and has determined that we wish to keep all bridges open, again, recognizing the impact on the agricultural community. So with that change, yes, Meaford does have funding in our reserves to do a second EA, and that problem statement would be very different and would suggest that we look at solutions for these bridges. And I appreciate the discussion of exploring alternate bridge construction, because we know there's lots of companies out there now who are creating solutions, because these are not the only bridges within our county and well beyond, where we recognize that we can't make huge investments of millions of dollars, but the bridges need to be need to be kept open, and how do we do that at an affordable price? So I do believe that the bridge companies are looking at solutions, and I would strongly encourage County Council to go forward with the recommendation of staff undertaking a report so that some of those potential solutions could be explored. And I just wanted to add as well, having been present at the measurement exercise, that there was discussion that day that the bridges probably weren't designed to be 6.08 meters or 6.094 meters. And their very strong likelihood is that they were designed to be 20 feet at the time of the construction. And we recognize that in this period of time that there's been some wear and decay on the concrete, which has probably caused them to be now just slightly less than that 20 feet. But I would be very certain that that was the original design. And I see Pat even nodding, so thank you for that. So I'll leave it there and look forward to further questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Leary, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Well, I find it encouraging after listening to Randy that there may be multiple options to look at, and I certainly look forward to seeing a report come back. The big thing for me, obviously, is, and we can ask this question when the report comes back, is this going to be precedent setting? You know, are we going to replace this bridge and then all of a sudden we have 10 or 12 to replace? And so that's my big concern. And the other thing, I'm a little concerned about the measurement thing too. Like if it's really that close, do we really have to split hairs? But anyway, I look forward to the report coming back, and I thank Randy for his presentation.
Thank you, sir. Next is Councillor Gamble.
Yes, thank you, Warden. With Randy's comment, and this was something we, Chatra took a bus trip out one day and we looked at it. Is there a possibility, like you can see the two tributaries standing in one spot, they're that close. Is there that possibility for those two to be put into one? And Randy kind of alluded to it, and I've never heard anybody else say anything since. So, you know, that would sure help the cost of this whole event. And I would really like to see that in the study and see if that's a possibility, along with a cheaper venue of bridges and whatnot. It is a very important thing. And I'm kind of taken back by Mr. O'Leary's comment. I think we're talking two different things. You know, I'm a farm background, and I support farming venue, and I hope he realizes where his food's coming from. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gamble. Next is, sorry, Randy, did you want to add something to that question about the two into one?
I could speak briefly to that too.
Sure, that'd be great. Thanks, Pat.
Yeah, because we had had some a little stream kind of moving somewhere else, kind of south of Ayton, that we had to get permission from the conservation for. So they will allow it occasionally. You know, you have to come up with a design and hire a hydrogeomorphologist to figure out that there's no you know, negative impacts, because water, you know how water is, goes where it wants to go, right? So it's never cheap either, obviously, but ideally it is something that we've looked at in the past, where you kind of think the one tributary is quite small, so you kind of think maybe it's something that for sure is worth investigating. But again, there'd be quite a bit of engineering to go into that, and it wouldn't be by, say, our staff. It would be, we'd have to hire somebody to do that work because it's quite complicated. But it is something that for sure we'd want to investigate if we were tasked with this.
Thank you. Councillor Desai, you're next.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. Randy mentioned that there is the option of combining the two and splitting the cost of building the new structure 3 ways. The question that I have, Warden Hicks, through you too, Randy or Pat, is if that is the case, if that is the way we go, who would own the bridge, or who would own the structure, and who would be in charge of maintaining that structure? And of course, what's maintenance, there's winter maintenance as well included in that. So again, you don't have to have that answer for that right now, and I'm sure it'll be in the report that comes forward. I just wanted to highlight that concern that I have regarding it. Thank you.
Well, I see heads nodding, so I'm sure that's something Councillor Desai that would be addressed in the report if we decided to go that route. Councillor Robinson's hand was up, but it's down. Oh, it's back up again. Councillor Robinson, you're next.
Thank you, Warden. I do appreciate it. I've been having just a bit of concern with my broadband, so appreciate the attention to understanding that I wanted to speak. I share similar concerns to my colleagues around the table, and I certainly support the motion at hand for a report. The bridge measurement and certainly is something that perhaps has evolved through engineering standards that could be addressed, and the potential for various solutions to this matter, but also if the report can address on a county-wide basis how this could be approached, and if there is in need of a policy that could address it. I'm not concerned with precedent setting as much as policy setting, in that it would address county-wide issues of this nature. So I do look forward to the report, and those are my comments for now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Boddy, you're next.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. I no time does Councillor O'Leary want me defending him. I think his point that seems to have been missed a little bit is this really county jurisdiction and county responsibility? And I think that's the first question for me that I'd want to have determined. If it really isn't, I don't think we should be creeping into lower tier responsibility to if we don't need to. You know, I go back to that transportation master plan, and Councillor Robinson just sort of hit on it about having an overall policy, which I thought really was what we talked about passed with the transportation master plan in 2015. I recall before coming on to council, then Warden McKinley going around to the lower tiers and talking about trying to get the county out of the responsibility of local roads and local bridges. And the whole idea of that transportation master plan, I think my interpretation was that it was sort of looking again at the town of Blue Mountains carrying a quarter of the financial freight for the whole county, and should they be, when it's a lower tier road, are they really paying for a quarter of a road that that should be more local than it should be? So that was kind of the idea, as I recall, from the transportation master plan even coming forward. I almost wonder if we should be putting this off until we've got the bridge classification criteria to look at before we move forward. If it's county responsibility, it's county responsibility. And if it isn't, and if under the transportation master plan, the idea was to try and get out of some of these local roads and things, then it really is the responsibility of Chatsworth and Meaford to look after it. And, you know, this isn't an Owen Sound hat, this is a Grey County hat. So you know, and I think that's what Christine just kind of hit on about having an overall Grey County plan, but I think that should have been what, or is what the transportation master plan was supposed to be about. And I've got a lot more questions than I have answers before we move forward with this and commit from the county level. I do have concerns about us, precedent or no precedent, that we move forward after making decisions to try and get out of local roads, that we start going further down the path of funding local roads, 10th Street Bridge or not. It's just something I think we need to be conscious of, that we did make a decision as a council a few years ago that we were going to get out of these types of things. But I just want to be sure that it is a council responsibility before we start deciding how we put together bridges, whether it should be two, whether it should be one, or what the different options are. Thanks.
So I'm gathering, Councillor Roddy, that you favor a report that would hopefully address that issue. Anything to add to that, Pat or Randy? No? Okay. Councillor Potter, you are next.
Thank you. And just to support what Councillor Boddy just said, and Councillor Robinson, I'd like to see a policy on this. you know, otherwise we leave ourselves open to going back to the old days when everybody handed up anything they didn't want to have to pay for or couldn't afford to pay for. They handed up to the county level. And it's a slippery slope as far as, and I don't mean any pun there at all, but you know, I'm not sure this is the direction we want to take the county in for the future. So we certainly do need a policy, as Councillor Boddy suggested, and we need to look at what the county should be taking on. And you know, this idea that it's a matter of inches one way or another, I think there's a lot more to it than, you know, we're talking millions of dollars. We have a very similar situation here in our municipality. We have 2 bridges that serve 1 farm. We're not asking anybody else to help us fund the replacement of those bridges. They need to be done. They're our assets and we need to manage them. So we're not going to ask our partners in gray to help us with that. I think that Councillor Desai raised a good point about asset management. If the county's going to take on these assets, then the county should have some say in the way assets are managed by individual municipalities as well, so that this doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Deputy Warden McQueen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I don't want to take too much of County Council's time. A couple of things. I know the agricultural sector is across Grey County. It's not in one or other municipalities. It crosses borders that way. So we are looking at a county issue in the sense of agriculture. I guess the question I have to Pat, and I was looking through the reports, before the road was closed, what were the average traffic counts? Is it under 50? I know that was one of the ones I think with our road. Is there any?
Yeah, I wouldn't know. That wasn't our road, so I wasn't aware what the counts were, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, maybe that's something that could come back through that report. I think it's encouraging to hear that if there's a possibility, like I know with elected officials, we're tasked with trying to look at solutions and coming up with solutions to the issues that we were facing. I think it's encouraging to see if one of the bridges or the stream could be relocated to one crossing. I think that's encouraging. And again, it goes back to the part that if it's a low count traffic road, then certainly reach out to our staff of what we did in Grey Highlands and with the solution itself, because there may be a very, other than a process, there may be a very relatively lower cost solution that sort of achieves what we want to do and move forward. So I'll leave those points maybe that could come through the report, but I just look at opportunities that maybe we're oversimplifying what we need to do here in a sense of coming up with some real solutions. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Next is Councillor Keaveney, and Councillor Burley, you'll be after that.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And just in response to Deputy Warden McQueen's comments about traffic counts in a recent bridge report that came to me for council, bridges 21 and 22 were listed as having traffic counts of 50 prior to their closure. So just to clarify that, and I just want my final comment to be that the recognition that I know the bylaw is an old one, 1928, but in any event, that bylaw does state that on a town line, if a bridge meets a span of 20 feet, that it is a county responsibility. So I think that's where we sit in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burley, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I would hope that our conversation do not get away from our motion we have on the floor before us. I think that staff report is extremely important for us to be able to base any kind of decision to move forward. So I'm going to ask for a recorded vote on that motion, and I think the motion should be taken. The vote.
Thank you. I do see one last hand, Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and I won't belabor the point, but you know, some might consider this a good argument for single-tier government, but failing that, I do recall years ago that there was a debate about whether the county should take on responsibility for maintenance, replacement, and all the rest of it of any bridge in the county over X length or type of structure. Because as we all know, the county does have a specialized bridge unit, and bridge maintenance and construction is a very specialized type of construction. So, you know, maybe there's an argument here to be made that we rethink this whole bridge thing, and the county would maybe take on the specialized work of maintaining and replacing bridges over a certain size or whatever. I know Pat's just champing at the bit to get that one into his books, but you know, maybe there's a discussion to be had there. So anyway, that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you very much, Councilor Milne. Councilor Robinson, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was, through you, Mr. Warden, I am inspired, but by what Councilor Milne has just proposed. And I would suggest, if at all possible, could the pending report, should it be approved by this by committee of the whole and then ultimately council, could it include a discussion in terms of maintenance and care of bridges throughout county be included for discussion purposes? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking to the staff.
I guess I could answer that through you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, we could address. I will just tell you, we've looked at that in the past, and there is some issues, which would be in any report that we were to bring forward. One thing is that you know, obviously, if we took on, I'm guessing 3 times as many structures as we have now. Say if you pick 3 meters as your standard or something, where do we get that staff? Because you know, it's not like we're flush with bridge crew staff either. We have a hard time getting guys to volunteer to do that work, and then those workers do tend to get more injuries than some of our other workers. So you know, if you're doing lower tier work, and then we have a guy that's on permanent disability or something. So there's a lot of nuances that aren't necessarily obvious at first. But I can see that I know, and we run into this too. To tender bridge repairs and bridge maintenance is very difficult. You know, as soon as you contract it, someone gets in there, they start going at the bridge deck, they realize, oh, the 20% that need to be repaired is actually 80%. So I can understand how tendering the bridge work is very difficult, especially for smaller structures. And I do see some merit in a county bridge crew. It's just, there is a lot of difficulties in getting that together and making it work. But there's lots of bridges in the county, right? Like, so there is merit that way, yeah.
Okay, Randy, I do see your hand, but I wonder if, before going to you, Randy, if I could ask the clerk. I'm looking at the motion that's before us to receive and then to bring back a report, but I'm hearing a recommendation for a report that in my view goes beyond the scope of what I see here. Is that appropriate that be incorporated? Do we need to make a change to the recommendation that's before us?
If I may, Mr. Warden, I do think that Randy and Pat have taken note of all of the comments from council. They have identified a number of items to be addressed in there, but they also have an other category. And I think that within their report that they will bring back, they can certainly highlight some of those comments that have been heard by council today.
Very good. So we're good to proceed with what we have. Perfect. Randy, you're next.
Yeah, just further related to this, I guess, in terms of making sure that the scope of the report is obviously associated with the matter that's currently before council, in terms of considering first off, you know, who owns structure 22, and then what are some of the potential options. You know, I think in that staff report, we can maybe provide some further background information on some of the matters that have been highlighted. But if council wants us to proceed with some of those other larger options, county-wide options in discussion, I think that would have to be separate motion maybe at that time of that staff report brought back, and then further follow up and further staff report with respect to those matters, just because those are large topics. So we'd want to make sure, that we would have the resource to be able to dig into some of those matters further, but also to provide, all the information that we can to council to make a decision on whether or not they want to consider, for example, a county-wide bridge crew that's providing service to all local municipalities. But as Pat mentioned, we've attempted to that in the past in terms of looking at those potential options with limited success, but but we can highlight some of that in a future staff report if so directed. But I'm just wanting to make sure that we're keeping the scope fairly tied down to the particular structures. Just obviously we've heard the delegation and concern from the residents. We want to make sure that we're focused on this, but not losing sight of some of these larger matters and that have been raised to the questions, which I think are all great comments and questions. We just want to make sure we're not losing focus of the matter that's potentially at hand here.
I was muted. Councillor Potter here next.
Thank you. And just to support what Randy just said, I think the scope of looking at the whole issue of who should own bridges and who should own what bridges is way beyond what this delegation is asking us to do, and way beyond what we need to do. I think Randy's got it exactly right. And let's stick to what we're here for. And while I agree that we probably do need to review the whole issue of who owns bridges and other assets within the county, I don't think that's a matter for today. And I certainly wouldn't want Randy to address that in the time that he would have to deal with this report.
Okay, so I'm hearing two views, and hopefully, Randy, you've got enough direction to properly address this. I'm hearing the view that people want it to be focused on 21 and 22. I'm also hearing that some people would like to have the broader issue addressed. I think, Randy, you're saying your report could sort of bring us to some topics in that area. And if we wanted you to go further, that would require a separate and further report. Am I correct there?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking at this stage anyways. And that, whether that comes through notice of motion or following that report related to these particular structures. Like I said, we'll try and highlight some of those background information, the history of some of those matters. And if council wants us to dig into some of those matters further, I think that would come through a separate motion on the heels of that follow-up report.
Okay, very good. I think it's time for us to call the question on the motion before us to receive this report and for further investigation and a further report. Is there anyone opposed to that motion?
A recorded vote was asked for, Mr. Warden.
Yes, my apologies.
Yes.
Okay.
And I will note, Mr. Warden, that Councillor Woodbury has left the meeting. Okay, so he is not with us right now. Okay, so if you're in favor of the staff report, then in favor, if not opposed. Councillor Gamble.
In favor.
Councillor Burley.
In favor.
Councillor Carlton.
In favor.
Councillor McQueen.
In favor.
Councillor Desai.
In favor.
Councillor Patterson.
In favor.
Warden Hicks.
Yay.
Councillor Klumpus.
In favor.
Councillor Keaveney.
In favor.
Councillor Boddy.
In favor.
Councillor O'Leary.
In favor.
Councillor Woodbury isn't here. Councillor Millen.
Yay.
Councillor Soever is not here. Councillor Potter.
In favor.
Councillor Robinson.
In favor.
Councillor Hutchinson.
In favor.
Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. I think we will take a break. I'm going to suggest that we come back at 11:55 with that said, we'll adjourn and come back at 11:55 sharp. See you then. How are we looking?
Not quite. There you go, Mr. Warden, you have quorum.
Excellent, then we'll get started. We're on next to item 7B, which is dealing with the Hanover OPA number 3. This item has been moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor O'Leary. Scott, you have the floor.
Thank you, Warden Hicks, and good morning to the Warden and members of Council and those watching today. I'm just going to take a second here to share my screen, and I will get right to the presentation. So can people see the map of Hanover that's up on the screen now? Perfect, thank you very much. So what we have before us is an official plan amendment application number 3 that's been adopted by the town of Hanover. And this official plan amendment follows in a long line of work that's been done by Hanover over the past probably about 12 years to examine their growth needs going into the future. And the town has taken a number of steps there to be proactive about this, including looking at potential lands outside their boundaries to be considered for future growth needs. And there's an existing partnership with West Grey on some lands in the east end of Hanover, as well as looking at lands within their boundaries and making sure that the lands within their current town boundaries are being used efficiently and are designated appropriately for meeting their growth needs. And the current amendment before us is solely dealing with those lands within the current town boundaries. And dating back to 2010, the town had done a number of studies to look at the time, what was called their future development areas. And the planning consultant of the day, in cooperation, of course, with town council and staff, recommended setting aside those future development areas as 4 special policy areas that could be considered at a later date for growth purposes. And there was some assumptions made at that time as to how those lands could be used in terms of percentages that might be residential or industrial or what have you. And so what we have before us today is the further work from that 2010 work to now break down those 4 special policy areas in the north and south of the town into individual development designations. So what you'll see on the screen there, the lands in gray towards the north end of Hanover and the lands in gray towards the south end of Hanover are the lands we're looking at here today. And I'm actually just going to flip to the next screen. And what you'll see on this next screen is through this official plan amendment, the town has proposed to redesignate those lands to individual development designations, as well as this designation you see in the north in kind of the royal blue color, which is looking at the Hydro 1 lands, including the Hydro 1 corridor. So there's the acknowledgement that those lands won't necessarily be used for future growth purposes, although things like infrastructure or trails may occur underneath the hydro lines that pass through this part of Hanover. The rest of the lands have been proposed to be redesignated to a mixture of industrial uses and residential uses, as well as recognizing, especially in the south, that there are some lands that are hazard lands based on slope and water courses in that regard. So town staff went through the regular public process associated with this amendment. They've also hired consultants to look at the planning, the engineering, the environmental, and the agricultural aspects associated with this proposal. They've received comments from certain public bodies and businesses, and I will say that the town has been very open to feedback and have made a number of changes to the amendment in response to the feedback received. And county staff are supportive of the process and provided feedback throughout the process and had some great discussions with town staff in this regard. So what we have before us today is a recommendation for approval of this official plan amendment. There are some slight modifications being proposed to this amendment, which have been both run by and signed off on by town staff. I will say the recommended modifications are really sort of editorial, almost typographical in nature, just some very minor changes, nothing that changes the intent of the overall mapping or policy. As such, staff believe that this matter has regard for matters of provincial interest under the Planning Act. It is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the county official plan, and conforms to the overall goals and objectives of the town official plan, and gets them closer to starting to address some of their growth needs for the coming time period. With that, that's all I have at the stage, but certainly be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Scott. Are there any questions? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I always like to see planning matters before our county council. Just two questions, if I might, through you, Mr. Warden, that is. The first one, with regard to the hydro designated lands, is there any opportunity, and I was just looking through the map designation there, for any other type of usage other than trails or parkland?
Sure, through you, Mr. Warden. With respect to the hydro lands, existing uses can certainly continue in that area. So if there's existing farmers in some cases that are farming underneath the line, then that can still continue. It's more so the lands where the hydro has their current station, most likely in the near future anyway, won't be transformed into anything else. And we wanted to recognize those corridor lands in that they didn't necessarily need to count against Hanover's land totals in that regard. So if we didn't recognize them in this manner, they would be portrayed as either vacant industrial lands or vacant residential lands, which would artificially inflate the numbers for Hanover to make it seem like they had more developable land than they did. So what the town has done through the recommendations of their staff and consultant is to recognize these lands, knowing that there are certain infrastructure, trail, and even existing farm uses that can continue, but that they're not necessarily appropriate for future development purposes in terms of residential or industrial use there.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Warden, just a second question. And that is that for this official plan amendment, number 3 is specific to the lands within the boundary of the town of Hanover.
Scott?
Yes, through you, Mr. Warden. These lands are solely within the current boundaries of the town of Hanover, yes.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. And thanks, Scott, for the report. Very clear, very concise. And I just want to say this process was well worth it. The town of Hanover now has identified every acre within its boundaries. As Scott did mention, we were specifically concerned about the special policy areas. And now we do know what can be developed and what can't be, whether it's hazard or regulated by the conservation. And of course, the utility lands. And my understanding is you can also have a road underneath those utilities. So, but this is a huge benefit for the town of Hanover, especially when you look at future planning. If you know what every acre is designated as, when a developer walks in your door, you're ready to say, this is what we have for you. So it's well worth the process. And Scott, I want to thank you for that report.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Are there any other questions? If not, then I think it's time to call the question on the motion to receive and approve with modification. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. So we are now going to go back and deal with item 6C. And with that said, I'll turn it over to you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Before I begin, I will note that Councillor Woodbury has rejoined us. So a point of clarification, the request from Councillor Robinson is not considered reconsideration under the county's procedural bylaw because these minutes haven't been ratified by council yet. So in looking at this, I would say that it falls under reviewing a previous question on the agenda. So that's how I've structured it. And I've structured for council's consideration, a 3-step process to ensure that there's clarity for members of council, plus any of the public watching or reading the minutes after the fact. So it's my recommendation that we first begin with a motion to request that item 6C be pulled. If that is successful, then we adopt the consent agenda as amended. And then we would put 6C on the floor for consideration by council. So the motion that would be appropriate at this time is that the motion regarding the consent agenda to be adopted as presented be amended to pull item 6C related to report PDR CW 2021, Chapman Official Plan Amendment number 10, and this item be pulled and voted on separately.
Okay, so I need a mover for that. That would be Councillor Robinson. I need a seconder, seconded by Councillor Hutchison. Any discussion? If not, then I'll call the question on that. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no one opposed, that is carried. So now motion number 2, Madam Clerk.
Motion number 2 is to adopt the consent agenda with items A through E with the exception of C, as previously put forth to council. The original mover were Councillor Hutchinson and Millen, so I'm not sure if they would be in favor of putting their names on that amended motion.
I see a hand from Hutchison and Councillor Millen. Where is he?
Sure.
Okay, so great. Any discussion on that motion? And seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? And once again, no hand showing. That is carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
The final one then is item 6C, and that's related to PDR CW 2021, Chapman OPA number 10 merit report. So you'll be looking for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion.
Yeah, so I'm going to suggest Councillor Robinson, since you asked that it be pulled, that you be the mover. Are you okay with that? Yes. And
I would like, oh, Mr. Chair, excuse me, I would like to place a different motion on that particular item.
So let's bring it forward first, and then there would probably be an amendment to the motion. So if you are not comfortable even bringing this, this just gets it before us for discussion.
Oh, point of clarity then, where I would be looking for a deferral for a certain amount of time, that cannot take place until the item as presented on the agenda takes place. Is that correct?
So you see the clerk nodding her head. And
yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So we put it on the floor, and then you can bring your motion to do whatever. But we need to put it on the floor for discussion first. So Councillor Body's got his hand up.
I'd move it.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Body, seconded by Councillor Patterson. The item is now before us for discussion. Anyone have any questions or items to raise with respect to this? Councillor Robinson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you to council. I would appreciate if County Council would permit a deferral of this item so that more information through our lower tier could be obtained, and then have this item back on Grey County Council for consideration. I would appreciate that. I know our next meeting is October 14th. If that would be appropriate, I would ask the indulgence of council. So my amendment would be to defer this item to the next County Council Committee of the Whole meeting for consideration. And I would appreciate everyone's assistance. Thank you.
So then I need a seconder, and then we'll have some discussion about the motion to adjourn. So moved by Councillor Robinson. Is there a seconder for that motion to adjourn? Councillor Hutchison, second. Now we can have discussion on the motion to adjourn. I see hands up. Hopefully those hands are with respect to the motion to adjourn.
Sorry, more, it's a motion to defer, Mr. Warden.
Excuse me, yeah.
Yes, okay, just clarifying that.
Sorry, the legal hat is still on here, I suppose. Councillor Body, go ahead.
I just want to know what information we expect to bring and want to hear from staff of whether there's any impact by deferring for a meeting.
So Scott?
Through you, Mr. Warden, with respect to Councillor Body's question, certainly I'm happy to run through the information that's in the report. With respect to the motion to defer, I guess my respectful question back to Council would be with respect to the already scheduled public meeting for this application. We do have a joint public meeting scheduled with West Grey on Monday, October the 18th. That's been advertised both on our website and mailed out to landowners in the area. And if there was some thought that West Grey Council or County Council was looking at delaying that meeting date, then we would like to get notice out to members of the public and agencies, and of course the proponent, as soon as possible. So certainly I'm here to answer any of Council's questions with respect to the application before us or the process ahead, and support in any way I can.
And I'll turn to Councillor Robinson to address the question about what is it that you information you expect Council to receive if we defer.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden. And it wasn't to delay any of the advertised public meetings that are already scheduled, but it was the intent is that if there was anything in addition, which was felt that this particular item was looking for additional public consultation, then it would be information that I would like to receive through the lower tier, but it is not to address the items that have already been rescheduled. It's just for any additional matters or call for public hearings or public meetings with regard to this matter. Thank you.
So is it possible that additional information would come as a result of the public consultation? Or is it something in addition to that? Councillor Robinson.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, is that what you're asking me, Mr. Gordon? Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if it was a planning staff question. No, with the way that the motion is worded, to me, it was additional public meetings that would be required. If it is something that has already been scheduled through newspaper and through the process, that is not what I'm focused on. It is for any additional public meetings at this time. I'd like the opportunity to have that addressed through lower tier staff.
Okay, Councillor Body, anything further there?
I'm sorry, that just makes me more confused, because it seems to me this is a proposal to proceed to public meeting. And if Councillor Robinson's saying we should go ahead to public meeting, but wants to comment on it later, I suspect this would be coming back to Council to consider at some point. I'm not sure whether she wants her motion to stand or not.
Councillor
Well, that certainly is a good point, Councillor Body. This is dealing with any, if there are items that have already been advertised and circulated, it is not to preempt that, but if there's any additional meetings that are coming forward, that's where I would be looking for deferral so that it could be addressed through West Grey. So is this particular, for clarity, is this motion dealing with the matters of public consultation that are already taking place or additional? That is where the question that lies with me. Thank you.
Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you for your question, Councillor Robinson. So this report is sort of twofold. One, it was to introduce the fact that we've got this amendment to Council, such that once it had been circulated, if any of you received any questions or comments via phone or email, you would be aware of the fact that that staff have received this application and are processing it. And it was seeking direction just to move forward with the statutory process under the Planning Act for a joint public meeting dealing with both the official plan and zoning requirements. In this case, and in the case of planning developments in general, what we would typically do is proceed with an initial public meeting and start to gauge the level of public comment or public concern with respect to an application. And depending on what was received there, and depending on whether or not there was any changes to the proposal, it could necessitate a future second public meeting. But that's only really decided after we've been through sort of that first phase of public consultation. So at this point, I think from a county staff perspective, it would be premature to suggest that we would or wouldn't need a second public meeting, but we do know that by legislation, we do need this first one, and we would like to move forward expeditiously with that to start to get those comments, as long as Council is supportive of that approach.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, I'll recognize you just shortly. Councillor Millen, I just want to explain why I'm dealing with this, and I'm going to go back to Councillor Robinson, because I think it goes to whether or not we actually required a motion before us. So Councillor Robinson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you to Councillor Milne for the indulgence. I look at the motion, which is why I was suggesting that there be a deferral at this time, because it does say that the municipality of West, oh wait, I need to look at this further, that the proposal proceed to public meeting to consider an amendment to the County of Grey official plan to redesignate a portion of the lands from the rural designation to the primary settlement area designation to allow for expansion of an industrial use on lands legally described as part lots 94 through 97. Concession 1 WSTR, Municipality of West Grey. Provided that the municipality is prepared to hold a joint public meeting in consideration of the necessary local amendment requirements. So at face value, in terms of the approval that is needed here, my deferral was to allow time for consultation or questions at the local level before support of this particular motion goes forward. That's why I was seeking the deferral. So I'm concerned that there have already been scheduled meetings prior to the consideration of this motion at hand. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Okay, and Councillor Milne, oh, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I just bamboozled might be the word, but I'm not sure. I do not see the need to defer. A joint public meeting between the two municipalities, Grey and West Grey, allows the public to say their piece, so to speak. And if after the end of that meeting, a further public meeting is needed, then by all means, let's do that. I think Scott said it very well, and I guess my first reaction was to say, yeah, what he said. So I won't support the deferral. I think we need to move along here and try to accommodate Mr. Chapman's proposals.
Randy?
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with Scott's previous comments in terms of that there will be the opportunity if council so desires to schedule a second public meeting with respect to this. Obviously, we always want to try to have a joint public meeting. It's rather than two separate public meetings. So that's why we always work with local municipalities and local municipal staff to work on scheduling of those. What we may look at down the road was with respect to maybe the wording and motions related to OPAs. Like as Scott indicated, the intent is to bring this forward for information to council in terms of making council aware of the amendment. Council does have the ability at this stage to indicate if they feel that there's no merit into proceeding. At the same time, we want to try to continue to move forward and schedule those public meetings. In fact, it has been delegated to staff to move forward with the scheduling of those public meetings. If council or committee of the whole today decided that there wasn't merit in terms of proceeding to the next stage, then of course we would cancel that public meeting. But at this stage, staff see merit in the current proposals before us. We want to have that public consultation and discussion with, of course, the municipality of West Grey and municipal staff, as well as other agencies and members of the public. And then that's all those comments and then are brought back forward to a recommendation or a final report to council, whether or not this official plan amendment should be supported or not. So that's kind of the process currently in the nutshell. Maybe it's the wording in the motion that we have to explore further in the future in terms of to try to clarify that. But I just wanted to point out in terms of what the typical process would be with respect to this.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. And then I think perhaps it's time to call the question on the motion to defer.
Thank you. My concern was in terms of the last sentence where you're looking for the municipality of West Grey's support in terms of holding the public meeting. So is there information that will be presented to our lower tier for approval prior to this meeting taking place? It's just within the process and the awareness of this information so that all concerned are aware of it in advance. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Warden, to Councillor Robinson's question. What we typically do is, as Randy mentioned, we work with your municipal staff to schedule the public meeting, and each municipality works on it a little bit differently in that some municipalities like to take a similar information report to their council or to their planning committee ahead of the public meeting. But what we find, what most municipalities in Grey tend to do is to bring sort of an information report at that meeting, at that same public meeting, to go over just the sort of non-disputed details about the application, not necessarily to make any recommendation at that stage on approval or refusal or deferral, just to say, hey, listen, we have this application by Chapman's Ice Cream. They're looking to do X, Y, and Z, and to move forward there. So as Randy suggested, we're certainly open to any adjustments to the wording in the future or any adjustments to the process, working with municipal staff in the 9 municipalities across Grey. And I do apologize for any confusion on this one. There was consultation with West Grey staff to find this meeting date and to get it on an existing West Grey agenda. But I do apologize for the confusion here.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson?
So with that, that additional information, I will withdraw my request for a deferral based on that information. I appreciate the time that this council took for the opportunity to provide much clarity that was needed for this particular item that was listed on a consent. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Warden McQueen, you need to comment now that this motion to defer has been withdrawn?
Yeah, so I'm just speaking to the main motion then, is that correct?
I think we're on to the main motion now.
Okay, yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Warden. And just as a follow-up to the report, I know it talks about a joint meeting with the County of Grey and West Grey, but if you read through the report, probably most would know, it does have some effect on Grey Highlands as well, in the sense of access and stuff. So I wondered if you could include Grey Highlands in that public meeting as well, whether just as attendance or however. I just wonder, I don't know if through you, Mr. Ward, to Scott, if there was conversations with our planner. It's sort of a unique situation, not to hold back the process, but just sort of somewhat be included, because this is a county official plan amendment itself. So I just wondered if there is some thought around that part.
Huh?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Warden. Thank you for your question, Deputy Warden McQueen. It's a great point because the lands are in.
I'm going to interrupt you, Scott, if I could. Now, Deputy Warden, I believe that your microphone may be causing some additional feedback. There we go. Okay, Scott.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the lands are in West Grey, but the current Chapman's ice cream plant is in Grey Highlands, and the servicing would be extended from Grey Highlands if there was approval to do so, and a number of the roads that would be used in hauling materials in and out are also municipal roads. So the county has been working collaboratively with staff from Grey Highlands and West Grey on this one, even in advance of the application being submitted. And in fact, when the application was submitted, the proponent submitted it to West Grey, to Grey Highlands, and Grey County, even though Grey Highlands didn't technically have an application there, but just recognizing the fact that it does have an impact on Grey Highlands in that regard. Since the application has been received, we've been in contact with Michael Benner, the Director of Planning and Development in Grey Highlands, and are interested to work collaboratively between West Grey, Grey Highlands, and the county and Chapman's to try to make sure that any and all comments from Grey Highlands can be considered, whether at the public meeting stage or whether through written correspondence. So thank you for raising that, Deputy Warden McQueen. It's a great point for sure.
Go ahead, Deputy Warden. You're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So just a question that I to follow up to that would be is, so it's a public meeting, so I would think maybe residents and maybe even some of the councillors from Grey Highlands would like to be in attendance to that meeting or just however. So how would that process move forward in the sense of just having the maybe a special invite to that meeting, just in the sense of having an understanding and also having the ability from certainly Grey Highlands councillors and stuff like that to hear the comments and be part of that meeting, just or somebody, or even just to sort of hear those comments, so then they can also have a good understanding of what's being conversated at that time.
Sure, through you, Mr. Warden. So Grey Highlands has been circulated, but I certainly hear Deputy Warden McQueen's point. So perhaps after this meeting, I could endeavor to send a message over to both Grey Highlands Director of Planning and Development as well as their clerk to just ask that if they feel it's appropriate at the municipal level to share that public meeting invite with Grey Highlands Council, and then if they chose to attend, they could. Certainly, as Randy mentioned earlier, any and all comments will be brought back through County Council and through West Grey Council in that regard with respect to the applications. But we're certainly happy to forward that joint public meeting invite along to Grey Highlands in that regard.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, you had your hand up at one point, but took it down. You're good?
Yes, I'd just like to say thank you for the clarity in the process. I think it defined it much better, and I appreciate the time that was taken in order to address this separate from the balance of the consent agenda.
Okay, so I think it's time to call the question on the main motion, which is to receive this report and to proceed with the public meeting. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no hands, I'm going to say that is carried. Thank you very much. We are down at the end, aren't we? We're on to item number 8 now, other business. Is there any other business? Heather, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. A couple things after, I'm assuming we'll have a break, but Jody McEachran has scheduled some cybersecurity training, tentatively starting at 1 o'clock. It's not advancing the business of the county, but it is just information for council members. And my other item is good news, I think, but sad. Tara Warder is coming back to us on Monday from her parental leave. So today is Kathy Nuno's last day as our deputy clerk. She has been taking on that role since Tara went off in March. And I want to thank her very much for stepping into this role and taking it on with as much enthusiasm as she did. So I appreciate that and wanted to thank her for that.
Well said. Any other oh, Councillor Desai. Yeah.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. Unfortunately, this meeting also spells the end for my bi-weekly tradition of asking the CAO when we're getting back into chambers. I was very happy to see that there is the plan to get back in a hybrid setting for October 14th. The words do not exist to express how excited I am to get back in chambers. Thank you.
Yeah, we know that you're very excited, but I should also make the point, and I made it to senior staff meeting yesterday, that for some it's very exciting, and for others there's a bit of trepidation there. So we want to be, sensitive to both sides. Some are really anxious to get on with it, and others are sort of. My wife uses the term people-y, that she finds certain places people. It's been an interesting couple of years, hasn't it? Okay, any other business? Item 9, any notices of motion? Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. I do have 2 notices of motion. One is with regards to looking at, I don't know if electoral reform is the right word, but I'll work with the clerk's department to come to the exact wording. But it is effectively around representation around county council table. And the other is with regards to exploring the cost of providing mental health supports to members of council at county council. I will work with the clerk's department to have better wording, as the clerk is a lot better at wording these than I am. So I just wanted to provide notice for those two motions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Any other notices of motion? I do not see any hands. So with that said, we're on to the final item, number 10, motion for adjournment, moved by Councillor Hutchison and seconded by Councillor Burley. Anyone opposed? And we are adjourned. Thank you so much. And we are coming back at 1 o'clock, same bat station. Anyone need to say anything about that? We're all back here at 1 o'clock for that cybersecurity training.